it needs to be systems and processes and attention to detail at every aspect, not just the finished plate. That's what I love. That's my particular passion.
Welcome to Dining Room Stories with Domar and Andrea, where we take you behind the scenes of the restaurant business world with stories and conversation that inspire.
Today, we're joined by the CEO and culinary director of LK Hospitality, the creative mind behind some of Melbourne's most acclaimed and famous venues, including Yugen Dining and Homya Bistro and Bar. Welcome to Dining Room Stories, Stephen Nairn.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. What an introduction.
Thank you, Stephen. We are very honored to have you here.
Thanks.
Stephen, you grew up in Scotland, West Coast. What were your first memories of food and hospitality there?
Scotland is a very cold climate, and it's a kind of place where I think my first memories are really, really simple food. Delicious things, but nothing fancy or over the top. It's just simple, rustic cooking. Coming from my family home, so nothing that would maybe identify itself to a particular region or area, but just warm, hearty, humble, good cooking. Things like delicious chicken broth soups or a soup we call Cullen skink. Simple things like that. Deliciously sourced fish, but just prepared really, really simply. Nothing over the top. Nothing like you Italians with big flavour bombs or Nonna rolling things out.
Nothing better than a warm family meal, I would say, Stephen. Right?
Well, yeah. I think that's the cornerstone of cooking is when it's all stripped back and it's just sitting around a table with the people you love, and it's just very honest. I think it's very hearty, and it's just the product at its best, and with family and friends. There is nothing better than that for me.
And what part of Scotland you from? What city?
The best part, Glasgow.
Okay.
I'm from Glasgow, but I did work in Edinburgh as well. But I'm from Glasgow, and that's where I trained as a chef in Glasgow, and then later I moved to Edinburgh for a few years. But yeah, that's home is Glasgow.
And how did your career start? What drew you to the kitchen originally?
I think what drew me to the kitchen originally was, to be honest, I just needed a job. I'd finished school quite early, done the first round of exams, and then I left and I was on a bit of a jolly, needed a job, became a classic chef story, became a kitchen porter. I kind of actually was drawn also, not just to the cooking, but the rigor of work process. I started to realize that I did enjoy that. And then I was working in a golf academy, cleaning pots and pans. They brought me into the kitchen. And then I started to realize, this is pretty cool. This is delicious. And then when I went to my first real restaurant, that completely opened my eyes to, the world of gastronomy, products, suppliers, farmers, fishermen, winemakers, professionals dedicated. I was a boy at that age, but it was crazy in my mind to see fully grown men and women with children and families that dedicated themselves to cooking, and they were there all day. And then I just fell in love with the whole environment, and then that was it. I was hooked, and that was good 20 years ago.
And you also work in some of the best restaurants in the world, including 11 Madison Park in New York.
Yes.
How did that happen?
That happened because I was the sous chef in a 1-star Michelin restaurant in Edinburgh, and I was wanting to kind of go on the next step of adventure, which is a lot of people would go to London or somewhere in Europe, but in the first job I was in, I had actually we went and done a game dinner. Scotland's quite famous for game. That's things like snipe, widget, teal, mallard, all different kinds of rabbit. And the birds are really, really quite prized. So we went and done that dinner. So I had I was kind of carrying a candle for New York. I loved it, loved the buzz, loved the city. So I applied to 11 Medicine Park. Wrote them an email, and they said, like, come over. We can't promise anything, but come over and spend a couple of days with us. A stage. And I went, I'd done a trial. I got the job. I got that J1 visa, which I think is gone now, but it used to be you got anywhere between 12 and 18 months in America for quite, it wasn't a green card, but quite an affordable rate for a young person. Whereas I think now it's like absolutely crazy to get over there and even just to work for a short space of time. And yeah, then I moved to New York and started working in 11 Medicine Park. And yeah, that was an unbelievable journey. And then from there, I ended up here in Australia.
Yeah, beautiful. So what's the story? Like, why you choose Melbourne in 2013, right?
Yeah, I think it was around, the dates are all kind of blurred. I think it was around like 2013. Well, the reason I came was after New York, I went back to Scotland, and me and my now wife, we were, the original plan was to just go traveling. And we had some friends here, so we thought we would stop in Melbourne. Plan was it would be like, 6 months. I think the original working holiday visa you got here was it a year?
1 year.
Yeah, it was 1 year, something like that. So I thought, like, similar to New York, we'd come, we would do a bit of time. But I ended up working at Vue de Monde and loved it. And then, ended up, going on the
How
sponsorship.
old were you in 2013?
I think it was 24.
Wow, very young.
Yeah, because I'm 36
still are very
now.
young anyway.
36 now, so
you're still
yeah.
young, but
Yeah.
How was the scene in Melbourne like around that
The scene
period?
was really, really different. I'll be honest. Like I was actually not. I loved it, but it was not the environment that I came back from. I think like at those times the restaurants in the UK, they were the high level or Michelin star places or places of particular interest for that I liked. I wouldn't say they were all similar, but there was a kind of framework that they moved into. And then New York was completely different. New York, there was an amazing variety of those classic Italian American places like Del Posto and really that high end like Lux. And then there would be like the mom and pop places that were incredible in Little Italy or different, Koreatown. And it's just, my mind was like blown from that. And then when I came to Melbourne, I think a lot of the higher end restaurants were far, far, far more casual in terms of the style of service, the shading plates at the table, just the whole vibe was a lot more casual. And I enjoyed it, but it was different. But Melbourne was like on fire. I think at that point, they had, Attica was kind of, they were leading the charge. Then there, like Bray and, you had Vue de Monde and there was other great things happening in Sydney. But even at every small level, I think there was lots of fantastic stuff happening. There obviously still is in Melbourne. So yeah, it was exciting, I would say.
Yeah, beautiful experience. And of course, it's evolving like over time. Still so you've been working at Vue de Monde and then your experience at Estrelle also and Matilda, right?
Yes.
How did you see the evolution of difference around these venues?
Well, I think I had a clear understanding because I have been fortunate in my career to have great mentors at different stages of their career. Some people in the UK that are, were started off as chefs and became very successful in business, and people in the beverage industry that have done certain things that have been able to I've been able to get good forms of advice from. So something that was really, really clear to me was learning a wide variety of skill sets after, not just within the kitchen, because it is, I think once you understand that you're what I call a lifer, you're in hospitality for life. Hospitality has so many different avenues. It's not just restaurants or hotels. It splinters out into so many different spheres. So the reason for that was to gain to gain different experiences in a wide variety of different styles of restaurants. The majority of...
Hi guys, I hope you're enjoying the episode. Remember to subscribe to our channel to get updates and keep enjoying the rest of the episode.
of the first, say, 15 years of my career was all in the very traditional high-end fine dining restaurants, which is my passion. But you're only seeing a very select, genre of things. And I think you have to kind of venture out and put yourself into some uncomfortable situations to learn and develop different skills. And you need to get exposure to different sides of business. I think that's super important. You're not going to, if you're only remaining as the executive chef and not trying to deliberately get yourself into other areas, I think it's hard to get exposure. And then when who knows what you want to do, but I would rather have those experiences in the bank rather than just roll headfirst into something. I think you learn a lot, and I think that was the main reasoning for and what I took from those kind of experiences. Back to your question, I suppose.
No, that's great. I mean, what I mean is you're learning, and it seems like you still love learning, even if you've been stepping into
100%.
But you've been also stepping into culinary leadership.
Yes.
It's pretty amazing, right? So you seem really humble to me, considering your career.
Thank you.
But in general, I would say food is also culture, right? So
Absolutely.
what was your first, I don't know, when you met the Australian culture and the food culture in Melbourne, you say it was really sparkling. And then how did it go? Because you went up the ladder. And
so I think like the exposure to a lot of like Asian flavors in Australia was so superior to anything that I had experienced prior. I think, but in terms of like Australian culture, I think I really began to understand. There is some similarities to Scotland, but I think that it's more about how people interact with each other, where they do their celebrating, how they like to eat. I think that dictates a lot about, the style of service and the style of cuisine. So yeah, I think in terms of those cultural exposures, they come from everything. The people eating in your restaurant, to where you're socializing on your days off, the people you're interacting with. And then slowly over time, you become a bit more acclimatized to things and you have a bit of a better understanding. But Melbourne, there's so many, I was very, very familiar with the European influences.
Yeah.
That's no different to Glasgow. Glasgow has an enormous Italian community. I think it's one of the biggest outside of Italy. We have a strong Greek community. And so I was very familiar with the European side of things, but it was more when you become a bit further afield, there was a greater exposure to other areas, and it's all about it's all delicious, and I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, really, really beautiful, diverse cultures and community here in Melbourne. I'll say, Stephen, do you think it's more structure, like the food scene and the culture in Europe or in Australia?
Structured in what way?
In a sense that is like diversity, in also like if you have space for freedom and inventing dishes.
No, I actually have heard that from like the French community and the Italian community that will say like it's difficult in their home countries to like stray from or pair flavor profiles or use certain techniques that may not be traditional, or pairing a white fish with cheese or something like this, and that might be like an absolute no-no in certain areas. I personally have never felt those shackles because the culture in Scotland is like I think a lot of the kind of Michelin level food is heavily influenced by France and Italy. So but I don't have those deep set roots to that. So it's not like, it's not as ingrained. So I personally have never felt any shackles. And I think in when I was in New York, I saw a huge amount of like culinary exploration from different traditional cultures. So I personally haven't experienced that mainly because like that's not the kind of background that I would come from.
You definitely have a global view of the world and the food scene of the world.
Yeah, so I come at everything from a learning point of view, listening to people, and like if it's delicious, it's delicious. Yeah. And then I like to understand the process as opposed to, someone telling me that it's not delicious. It's like if you eat it, it's delicious, and then it's like, well, in my mind, it's like it's delicious.
That's what the
I'm not going to be
professionals
I'm not going to be influenced by someone telling me that it's bullshit for whatever reason.
So Stephen, cheese on the oysters or not?
Cheese on oysters, like it's not a preparation that I would naturally go for. But I'm not against anything. I like oysters mainly natural, with just their pure flavor. But if it's something I think for me it really depends on the oyster, the region. Is it high in salinity, which happens within the estuaries at different periods of time? Does it need a little boost? Is it creamy? Is it fat? Is it rich? I like to get the oyster, understand what's happening with it there and then, as opposed to, serving a flavor profile that is just on repeat. It doesn't, even though the product is changing, like the thing that I'm putting on top of the oyster isn't changing to match the flavor profile of the product. I think that's the where it needs to be changed. So I'm not against anything like cheese and an oyster. Like it's not necessarily something I would do, but I'm not against it.
Your approach is really versatile, and I can see a great expertise. So thanks for the explanation.
Yeah, no
I
problem.
was trying to challenge you, but you're
Please challenge me. Please challenge me.
Steven, you are an incredible chef. I've eaten at your restaurants a number of times. Omni especially is one of my favorites.
Thanks.
I'm the businessman though. I need to ask different questions. So you now lead a team of over 120 people at
Yes.
LK Hospitality. How do you balance the creativity of a chef with the business side of running an operations with costs, staff, wages, and rents?
So I think like a lot of that is it comes from experience. I think most importantly, it's like it needs to be systems and processes, and I think that's like where you have in developing people and training them from the ground up, that they have ownership and responsibility in each of the decision-making processes they're responsible for. Then as a leader, you obviously got to provide good, strong direction, hold them to task. And when something's not quite right, explain why. But I think by having a really sound understanding of the operation itself is absolutely critical. Because it then is, especially things like, in Australia, the hardest cost to manage is the labor cost. And you want to be providing exceptional service. There's not a start and a finish. Someone may, stay at the restaurant for a long period of time. They may be having a great time. It's a constant tweaking. I think the key things of how to manage that and cope with the mental pressure and stress of weekly, daily that's coming at you is one, by having a really strong understanding of the process. Not just a bird's eye view down, but really having been in through it completely. That's everything from understanding when a dishwasher breaks down, like what should that cost? What not taking the first price, negotiate these kind of, but really being hands-on before delegating the responsibilities down. But by setting kind of clear boundaries and responsibilities for each line of management, and making sure that it's that it's happening, but there's a why it's happening. I think that why piece of the information is super, super critical, as opposed to this is just the way I want it done. I don't think that's effective. I think it needs to be like, look, this is the reason why this happens.
I don't think that style works anymore.
No, I don't think that works. And like you want people to be bought in the same way you're bought in. Of course, there's a difference between being an owner and an employee, but one day they will be owners of their own business, their own restaurant. That's always the ultimate goal for majority of people, even though it's becoming harder and harder. But I would say that, yeah, it's having checks and balances, having strong systems and processes, but being completely on top of it 24/7, understanding what the parameters are and asking questions, and having a strong team, whether it's people, helping you with your accounts, whether it's helping you with your time and attendance and things like HR, but making sure that, you're not being removed, you're removing yourself so far from the fire, so to speak, that you no longer understand like how the operation is moving, so that you are able to pivot when that needs to happen.
A lot of restaurateurs or hospitality business owners are complaining right now about the economy. What is your view?
Well, I would say that things are definitely difficult, and restaurants are a place where you can see that it's, if people have less disposable income, of course, then they'll be less willing to spend or frequent restaurants multiple times per week. I think there's also other impacts, like I think there has been a big conscious shift away from like heavy drinking, and people are a lot more health focused and things like that. But I would agree that it does feel like the economy has slowed down. We're still kind of not doesn't feel like, every now and then there's glimpses that there is some, things are coming back. The city feels a buzz. I think like quite quickly you hear crazy things happening in the CBD. There's this, there's that, and it feels like it's still quite inconsistent. So I would kind of be on that camp where I think we've still got a long way to go to get back to the post-COVID days.
Absolutely. I think it'll take a while.
Yeah.
Tell us about you. What does your day look like, from the boardroom to the kitchen pass?
Yeah, so I think like the day-to-day is mainly not every day is the same. That's one thing is, I think in the morning, what it's like, you're on the phone constantly, whether that's dealing with maybe special events that are coming up, maybe it's new lines of inquiry, supplier management, understanding what's happening with your growers, your farmers, and then dealing with your office team, making sure that they feel supported, they understand what we're trying to achieve, and then it's back into the operations side, the kitchen side, working with the team, making sure that everything from that world is marrying up with what's going to happen into the restaurant, providing the guidance, making sure that we're staying on track, we're bringing those new dishes through, we're bringing these new pieces of service through, constantly refining. So I like to, rather than have it, hourly, I kind of have two kinds of mentality, where there's the preparation side, and then there's the execution side, and then within it's constantly swinging back and forth. And when you have multiple restaurants, they're not all, it's impossible. I think the key thing is you need to be very, very flexible, very, very fluid, and definitely you got to have a very understanding wife, because it's 24/7.
You are a very busy man. Do you still have time to stay in the kitchen?
Yeah, I still have time but it's about creating time. It's about, finding that there is periods where, you're getting pulled further and further out, and, everyone's wanting a bit of time to discuss this or look at this, but I think it's about finding that balance to create a little bit of time to just solely focus on your passion. And that's what I think keeps you connected is, every Saturday I'll still go to the traveling farmers market. And that's like absolutely critical, I think, is, going and it just gives me a really strong understanding of what is actually happening there and then, as opposed to, going on a website, looking through a big wholesale list that things are just readily available. I think like being, talking to growers, farmers, producers, fishermen, then allow that is what keeps the passion burning. And then I'm able to pass that on to my head chefs and say, look, this is what's happening. This is what these products are exceptional right now. We need to get them through the restaurant. Let's start developing things, let's start, tasting through things. And then of course we also have an events side of our business. So that is always, there's always lots of things happening. So yeah, for sure. I create time for the kitchen.
You talked about mentors before. Who has been your bigger mentor in Australia?
I think, I wouldn't be able to just pick one guy out. I think, I've had some fantastic people in the business world, like of course my partner, Larry Kesselman, excellent entrepreneurial people like Nikola Milojosevic. But from a chef perspective, Scott Pickett has been a guy who's been really, really generous with his time, and he gave me access to a lot of information, and it brought me in on a lot of things that I think a lot of people probably wouldn't have done, which has definitely gave me amazing exposure to opening restaurants, from restaurant design, managing certain things, which I'll always be grateful for. But I've also worked with really talented people in all different areas that I've taken little pieces from. Obviously fantastic minds like Shannon Bennett and that I worked for when I first came to Australia, gave me his unbelievable introductions to like the tier, the really high level operators of that are in food product, the guys that are out there on the land doing it at the highest levels, like David Blackmore and people like that. So I've had multiple. I would be really I think unfair to put just one person to it. I think there's different people that can guide on different things.
And so you've been, of course, learning a lot from your mentors. You're the mentor yourself. What is your mentoring style with your people now?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think, I come from a family of teachers. Like my mum, my dad, and my brother are teachers. My mentoring style is I like to kind of pass over the philosophy of what the restaurant's about. I have a particular way that I like things to operate. I'm definitely quite systems and processes driven. I like things to be really well organized. So that framework sounds just like buzzwords, but passing that over and showing people how to actually work through process is really important. But in my mentoring style is about being a soundboard, really, and providing direction. I want the people to find their own path. Of course, I need to keep them on track to what we're doing at our restaurants, but it's more about proposing the question to generate thinking so they can find their own path, as opposed to saying, do it like this. I will be, staying a few steps ahead. I can see where it's going. And sometimes you need to let people go down the path so they can see that, I should have done it like this. And then providing the reasoning and I think direction and being a soundboard and listening is really strong mentorship. Is sometimes you don't often need to point them in the right direction. You need to just listen, because by them talking through the process, sometimes they can then hear it clearer when they've actually, as opposed to when it's just trapped in someone's mind and they're saying, I want to go and do this, and I'm going to do this, and this is how we're going to do it. By listening and asking the questions, prompting them, I think they can see the process like, a bit more work is required there, or well, if I can't translate the message, then how's anyone else going to follow me? So I think that is my mentorship style is by listening and prompting them into the right direction, but not by doing all of the work for them. It's much more being a strong soundboard and helping them find their direction.
That's a really beautiful approach, Stephen. And how do you balance creativity in management, but also in creating dishes?
I think I think the most important thing is being led by it sounds cliche and sounds like, everyone says that, but being led by the seasons and being led by the growers themselves, as opposed to saying, oh yeah, such and such should be good now. Let's just order 5 kilos of it and start. I think it's much more of understanding what's happening, the weather, the environment, what the growers are telling you. This is coming on. It's exceptional. And then after 20 years, you have a large repertoire of what you like. But when when you have head chefs and things, it's also important to allow them to have some input, allow them to have a say. So that's how I balance it. Like I know how I want to see it, the product necessarily represented in a broader range, but I want the chef who's working with me, who's trained with me, who's taken on my core principles of, respecting the ingredient, to how to actually physically cook it. I want them to have some of their own personality on the plate, but as long as the end result is that the product has not been over manipulated, that it's no longer an exceptional piece of coral trout, or it's changed from what it is, and it's just all technique, and it's not something that a diner can sit down, a guest in a restaurant can look at it and go, that is absolutely delicious. The product has still maintained its integrity. So I think that's how I balance the creative side is and into the business side. From the business side, it's making sure that where the product's coming from is A1. There's someone who's handled, nurtured, prepared the product, to its best in practice. We are receiving it in exceptional condition, and then it's deploying technique, allowing the head chef or whoever is the leader with that particular dish to bring out their own personality onto the plate. And then, as long as it stays within the philosophy and the principles of the restaurant, then that's the happy balance. I think it keeps everyone happy, and it allows the team to have input, and it's not just like, here's a recipe, cook it. I think in the early days that's important to build framework and boundaries within your team, but you when you're developing people, you want them to grow. And you want them to be, knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, have you seen this calamari that just came in? It's absolutely incredible. This is what I'm thinking of doing. Do you have 15 minutes at 3:00? Let's go through it. I want to show you this." I mean, that's fantastic. I think that's the happy marriage.
And your philosophy is very similar to an Italian style of cuisine. In Italy we have fewer ingredients in the plate of higher quality. Well, sometimes I've seen in Australia that, we have many ingredients in a plate. So,
yeah, I definitely, I think when you see those really, really high end, like 3 Michelin star restaurants, you will see that the mainly will only have 3 or 4 ingredients on the plate, and I don't think that's by chance. And I think if you think about, especially with, I'm certainly no expert in Italian cuisine, but when you think of some of those, like, those holy trinities, it's 3 flavors put together, tomato, mozzarella, basil. I mean, it's so good for a reason. I think that's because it's the clarity of the ingredient. When the individual ingredient is exceptional itself, it really only needs a couple of things to help boost the product, the ingredient, to let the ingredient shine, as opposed to adding for the sake of adding, or dressing a plate in a particular way that takes a beautiful photo, but when you eat it, it's underwhelming. I think you put so much time and energy into sourcing the product, handling the product, storing the product. We want to get it on the plate out to the guest is unmanipulated as possible, so that it's still shining in the way it should. I think for me that's what I love. That's my particular passion.
I love the narrative, but also, like, that's the Italian flag. I think it's probably easy. Like, oh, let's put the Italian flag on a plate. And then it was like, oh, mozzarella, tomato, and basil.
Yeah.
Just joking.
But you know, like it takes a lot of confidence to do simple things.
Yeah.
right.
It's much harder to execute things with 3, 4. And sometimes it's lost on certain people. But majority of people understand that it's absolutely delicious. You know, if you spend that, you know, there's different styles of restaurants and there's different things and there's different ways to layer flavor. But, you know, like you can have a sauce. You know, if a sauce would be one particular ingredient on a 4 or 5, you know, ingredient composition on a plate, it's not that the sauce will be incredibly complex. The sauce may be like an 8-hour process.
Yeah.
But it's when it gets to the guest, it's not you don't want that all that muddlement because it's too confusing. You want when they taste the sauce to be hit with this you know, absolute complexity of flavor.
I loved what you said before. Do not over manipulate an ingredient.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful. Like you summarize it perfectly. What I was thinking for years, and thank you. You just said it.
Yeah, I mean, and look, there's different strokes for different folks, but I think mine is much more. I much more enjoy the sourcing of the product, working with the grower, working with the farmer, the fisherman, whoever it is, winemaker, and then trying to just, you know, get it on the plate as they got it out of the ground or the ocean or the land I think that's a never ending buzz, you know. And when it's right and it's done right, it's pretty special.
And Melbourne scene is pretty sophisticated. How do you manage to keep your crowd always excited?
Yeah, you know, I think that it's by pushing our team to, which you know, sometimes I'm sure they probably hate, is to constantly innovate and constantly move forward. And that's really my role is to constantly try and push things forward. But I think that's in the kind of innovation side. But the other side is by looking after people. I think there's a big switch back to that where in restaurants where, touching back to some things on, you know, you were talking about the economy and there's nothing better when you go to a restaurant and, you know, the service is just absolutely everything. When you feel looked after, when you feel cared for, when you feel like they're in tune, like when you're looking at they're reading you, that just heightens it and makes the whole experience more magical. So I think, you know, constantly trying to innovate your menus and your offering, but the most important is the guest experience, looking after the people as they come in, looking for their needs, identifying what they want, trying to be a couple of steps ahead. If they want a lot of attention, provide it. If they don't, stand back. And you know, I think that's the skill, the art of the table. And you know, and when we don't get things wrong, don't be afraid to put our hands up and say, hey, that wasn't good enough. What are we going to do to fix it? I think that's important as well, is rather than thinking that you've not done anything wrong. I think, you know, constantly listening to feedback, looking for ways to improve, you know, looking at ways to improve your team, you know, bringing new people in to inject energy and things like that. I think that's all important to trying to look after your guest base.
And so it is an attentive way of serving people and balanced, I would say. So when you create plates, right, is it more about the emotion, the balance, or you try to conquer the guest?
No, I think it's a little bit of both. The balance is like absolutely critical. You know, that's important to making any kind of dish, but it's really the product, getting the product, sourcing the correct product. You know, understanding it. Is it ready to go now? Does it need a little day of aging? Does it need to be hung? Is it ready to go? Does it need to be seasoned? Understanding the best way to execute that product, then starting to build the dish around that. And again, it comes back to having that repertoire, your experience, that's when your younger years, when you're moving around the kitchen, you're learning all of these things. You're seeing how things react. You're understanding technique. And then it's almost like it's like a Rolodex in your mind. You know how things behave. It's like a mechanic, looking at a car engine. They're able to dissect the problem. It's the same with cooking. You see how something reacts. You understand them. There's too much humidity in the oven, or the temperature is incorrect. You need to tweak here, and trying to pass that on to your chefs, not just your head chef, but all of your chefs or your front of house team. When it comes to the service aspects, it's really constantly refining.
Attention to details.
Attention to detail at every aspect, not just the finished plate. I think that's the final step. It's really we're at the mercy of the growers. They are the true heroes of the restaurant world. It's the people that produce the products. When you spend a lot of time with these heroes, especially like my asparagus grower, he's 82, John Hobson from Janella Farms. We have a yarn down at the farmers market. He's doing a couple of less markets now. His son's kind of taking over, but I've learned so much about just vegetables from him, and just not just we need rain, but interesting things about how, if I'm taking it on a Saturday, when it needs to be cut, how it needs to be stored, too much refrigeration, not enough. That all adds to your bank of knowledge, so that you are then able to view products like that. And some people aren't excited by that; they're not turned on by that. But I have a thirst for learning about food, and I'm always looking to, these people are. If you've been growing asparagus for 60 years. I'm listening to the guy that's been growing asparagus for 60 years. I'm asking him, look, why is it like this? And John's such a legend. I take my son down to the farmer's market. He cuts a little tiny asparaguses for my son, and he gets these wee boxes as well. So that it's that thirst for improving and expanding your knowledge. I don't think that ever ends.
Steven, your attention to detail is incredible. We can see why you are very successful. And we can also see that you also been influenced by incredible mentors and the unreasonable hospitality from your time in 11 Madison Park. Where do you see yourself in the next 10 years?
That's a great question. I think where do I see myself in the next 10 years would still heavily involved in the restaurant game. I want to do a few more restaurants for sure. Different styles of things in the future, but also being much more connected to the product in all different varieties. I do have a passion for training people as well. So I would love to give back in all different aspects. I'll help people mentor chefs through competitions and things like that. So I would definitely like to, try and pass on some things. I had some amazing mentors in my formative kitchen years as well. When I look back, and I think that how grateful I am to those chefs that really had patience. Back in those days, chefs didn't really have. There was zero patience. You wouldn't really be allowed to ask questions in some environments. To ask a question was seen like, admitting defeat, that you didn't know something. But of course you didn't know it, because you're an apprentice, you're a commie, you're a chef de partie. And I think those, now everyone's a chef de partie, as opposed. I think we've lost a little bit of that. Those kind of nurturing years. I'd like to play a better role in, helping develop talent and develop chefs, so that they feel in a comfortable environment, so that with a lot of the times they have these deep rooted passions, and it only comes out when their confidence has been built. But it would have been there earlier, but we're just not, as an industry, maybe as good at highlighting that. So I would like to play a big role in mentoring people. I think that would be something that's important to me in the next 10 years. But, you know, I'm deeply passionate about all things hospitality, you know, not just restaurants. Like I love restaurant design. I love things like, you know, I even love hotels. I love pubs. I love, you know, bars, you know, all of it. I love it all. So, you know, I won't be going anywhere in the hospitality industry for a long time. I'll be
We
here
can
to
definitely
stay.
see that you are a very passionate person.
Yeah, we can feel the passion while you're talking. Yeah.
Lastly, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what do you say to him?
I would say like stay the course, you know, not to be too concerned. I think I was in a really big old rush for whatever, but I think that comes from like you know a lot of chefs that have worked in high level restaurants. Because of the volume of mise en place it needs completed in a very short period of time to an extremely high level, you do become drilled in a very like high performance, high speed environment, which once the kitchen clock stops and you go into it, that actually does all of a sudden overtake and come into your actual normal day-to-day life, where you are even you can't sit still. You are almost thinking like, right, what's next? I think I would go back and be like, you know, stay on the course. Everything's going to pan out for a reason. Slow down a touch, not slow down in the kitchen, but slow down in the thinking maybe, and just enjoy the process. I think that would be it. I would have said enjoy the process. Like I've opened quite a few restaurants, and I think the speed that you need to move at them, I don't know if I could go back, I would probably have said like slow down and enjoy the process. I think there's a kind of culture where it needs to be like absolutely flawless and perfect from day one, but it's pretty difficult to do that, and that maybe does stop the enjoyment process of looking around and going, you know, whoa, look at this, we like built this from the ground up, this didn't exist, we created it, look at all these amazing people that we've brought on board, we're training them, we're developing them, like everyone's having a good time. I would probably say I've gone back and just like enjoy it a little bit more because it's gone really, really quickly, and then all of a sudden it's onto the difficult stuff, like, you know, the business side of things that you said, and you kind of you can miss the moment if you don't slow down and enjoy the process, and, you know, take time to celebrate the wins and not worry so much about the losses. I think that's the one. So they would be, it's not one piece of advice, it's maybe a couple. I would say enjoy the process. What will be, and, you know, if the juice is worth the squeeze, then it's going to be enjoyable, and don't sweat the small stuff. It really doesn't matter in the long time.
Enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, I would say.
Yeah, enjoy. Yeah, absolutely.
We are building like real connections through people and successful people in the hospitality industry. So thank you so much, Stephen, for being here today. It's been such a pleasure to have you at Dining Room Stories.
Thank you. Thanks. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thanks.
Grazie mille.
Thanks.
Yes.
Grazie mille.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the episode. I'm gonna see you in the next one.
Welcome to Dining Room Stories with Domar and Andrea, where we take you behind the scenes of the restaurant business world with stories and conversation that inspire.